Britain's biggest arms maker, BAE Systems, bribed Saudi royals to secure a lucrative order of Eurofighter jets. Well, now, Paris-based Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development wants Britain to justify its decision to drop the fraud inquiry. Aljazeera has more details.
The Serious Fraud Office's decision to close the investigation followed weeks of pressure from Riyadh. The Saudi government was angered by SFO plans to investigate Swiss bank accounts held by members of the Saudi royal family. They were so outraged, in fact, they threatened to cancel the latest phase of the huge Al-Yamama arms deal, worth around $19 billion. In its announcement, the SFO cited national security and the wider public interest, claims that prompted a huge outcry from anti-bribery campaigners.
The UK government themselves have defined the difference between bribery and any other form of deal. In 2001, in the UK, a law was passed that set out what constituted bribery of foreign officials. The allegations against BAE, if they were true, would make BAE guilty of bribery under UK law. To know whether they are true, this investigation must be allowed to continue.
Had we proceeded with this investigation, it would have significantly, materially damaged our relationship with Saudi Arabia, that relationship is of vital importance for us fighting terrorism, including here in this country. And as I say, all of that leaves aside the fact that we would have lost thousands of UK jobs.
The OECD, however, disagrees. Officials in Paris will point out that the UK government is a signatory to the Anti-Bribery Convention and that the decision undermines international attempts to bring order to global trade and the arms industry in particular. It's far from clear what sanctions the OECD can bring against the UK, which is already facing the possibility of legal action from 140 different campaigning groups. This is a new and serious embarrassment for the Blair government, which entered power a decade ago, promising ethical foreign policy. But in today's globalised economy, promoting a level playing field is so important because corruption is at the heart of many of the issues on the top of the world agenda, and those include combating poverty and the fight against terror. Aljazeera, Aljazeera.
Well, earlier I spoke to Nicola Bonucci, who is the Chief Legal Counsel for the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development in Paris. I asked him what Britain is obliged to tell the OECD.
There is no obligation to tell. There is an exchange between the UK and the other member countries. In that exchange, which is an off-the-record exchange, by the way, today, and a confidential one, the other member countries will ask questions to the UK. It will be for the UK to answer, and it will be for the member countries to be satisfied, as I said, or not necessarily satisfied with the level of answer and the answers given by the UK.
Nicola Bonucci from the OECD there. Well, joining us now from Bristol is Dr. Samuel Perlow-Freeman, who's a defence economist at the University of West England and has written various papers on the arms trade for organisations including Oxfam and the campaign against arms trade. Dr. Perlow-Freeman, thank you very much for joining us. We've just heard from Mr. Bonucci from the OECD. He mentioned no obligation. It's an exchange between member countries. Doesn't sound very threatening, does it?
No, it doesn't, which I think fails to reflect the seriousness of this decision, the SFO decision, which really drives the coach and horses through the OECD Convention on Bribery and gives a green light to corruption in the arms industry. The OECD Convention does not allow a country to halt a prosecution on the grounds either of economic interest or of relations with another state. And now Tony Blair has made it quite clear that this investigation was called off because it was damaging relations with Saudi Arabia. That is in complete violation of the convention, and it completely destroys Britain's role that it's seeking in promoting good governance worldwide, which it rightly says is so crucial to development. It has lost all credibility now in that argument.
We've just heard that the OECD will conduct these meeting behind closed doors. If it does find the UK in breach of the convention, what teeth does it actually have to punish Britain?
I very much doubt that it will actually be seeking to punish one of the leading members of the OECD. I'm afraid that the fact that it is behind closed doors, what Mr. Bellucci said about there being no obligation sounds not very encouraging in terms of the sort of teeth with which this will be pursued. Tony Blair
always said that this was an issue as well of national security, so that's obviously one of the reasons why it is behind closed doors.
Well, I think that this national security thing is a complete red herring. As you've said today, the leaked documents from MI6 suggest that it's nothing to do with national security. I think what it really is to do with is the extraordinary influence that this government gives to the arms industry in general and to BAE Systems in particular.
Dr. Perler-Freeman, we're just running out of time, but very briefly, should we not maybe approach this with a little bit of realism? Is this not just the way that this business is done in some parts of the world?
It is the way that the arms trade is conducted worldwide. It's becoming increasingly apparent that corruption is not merely a dirty little detail on top of the arms trade. It's actually, in a lot of cases, what drives the international arms trade. Many of these deals would not happen if they did not provide opportunities for personal enrichment by the leading decision makers in the buyer countries. I think that this is a trade that is not in Britain's economic interest. It's not in our broader political interests and in the interests of the role that Britain says it seeks to have in the world.
Samuel Perler-Freeman, I'm sorry, we're running out of time. We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us.